Look, Anthony is going to have to fight the perception that was created down in Houston when he went out of the football game for the rest of his career. Right or wrong, he's going to have to
reminder,
affect
he
that.
tapped out of a game in the middle, which I think I've not heard one football player say they've ever heard of a quarterback
and you know what?
doing that.
Yeah, and that's not hyperbole. I've never seen that in my life.
When they drafted Anthony Richardson, the Colts did, everybody's like, hey, only 13 college starts. You need time. Well, I got news for you. Bo Nix looks good. Jaden Daniels looks good. Caleb Williams looks pretty good. And Anthony Richardson looks terrible. And it's like suddenly the owner's like, yeah, we made a mistake. And nobody's patient.
At 6'4", 245 pounds with 4.43 speed and a cannon for an arm, Anthony Richardson looked like he was built in an absolute lab. He boasted the frame of Cam Newton, the speed of Lamar Jackson, and the arm of Josh Allen, so it was no surprise that the Colts took the leap. He was a truly rare physical freak who did need time to develop but had sky-high potential. But that's the thing, potential is a dangerous thing. And for Indy, Richardson has now officially completed his journey from potential franchise savior to possibly being labeled one of the biggest busts of all time. And in today's video, we're going to go over exactly why the Anthony Richardson experiment failed. Now, we really need to go back to college to really understand how just much of a freak of nature that Anthony Richardson was. And yes, I do know that he had some flashes in the NFL, but in college, his first 2 seasons of college ball were kind of just not that talked about. During his sophomore year, he collected 529 passing yards and 401 rushing yards with 9 total touchdowns and 5 interceptions. He did start a single game, although it was a loss, and entering his sophomore redshirt season in 2022, Richardson was finally named the Gators starter and started all 12 games for them, as the Gators then finished 6-6 and failed to make a bowl game, but Richardson was flashing in a serious way. And I mean, in that sophomore season too, and going into his junior year, every Gators fan knew about his rushing ability. But that breakout season in his junior year showed everything and just really took everything to a new whole level. Linebackers literally bounced off this guy, and when he had open space, nobody was catching him. And then there was the bazooka of an arm, which meant literally no part of the field was safe. The deep ball was always an option, no matter how muddy the pocket. However, that was the first red flag, as Richardson never posted a season completion percentage of 60% or higher and averaged less than 55% for his collegiate career. He threw for 2,500 yards and 17 touchdowns, which was pedestrian, but his exceptional running ability added 650 rushing yards and 9 touchdowns. He gave up 9 interceptions, but had more than enough buzz surrounding him to have the confidence going into a potential 4th college season. That's the thing though, instead of staying in college and probably where he should have stayed for an extra year to develop and kind of just learn how to play quarterback better and wait until the 2024 season, he decided to enter the draft in 2023 in what was, I mean, it wasn't a lackluster draft pool, but definitely there was a lack of quarterbacks in the 2023 draft outside of CJ Stroud and Bryce Young. And look, I mean, to be fair, he was a better athlete on paper than CJ Stroud and Bryce Young, and he was younger too. So with that bit of a leg up, Richardson declared for the draft with 2 years of eligibility left in college. At the scouting combine, AR lit it up, running a 4.43 40, jumping 40.5 inches in the vert, and making ridiculous throws throughout the drills. And yes, while teams on tape saw that he did struggle with accuracy and consistency, his stock soared thanks to raw athleticism, as he became just the 3rd quarterback in NFL history to be given a perfect relative athletic score. Most teams saw a future Josh Allen or Cam Newton in the 6'4", 245-pound powerhouse, and it seemed like if the right coach got his hands on him, they could help him build the right habits and develop him into a premium starter. I mean, hell, there was even a stretch leading up to that 2023 draft where this dude was being talked about as being a potential 1st overall pick in that draft. However, as we all do know, on draft night, Bryce Young still went 1st overall to the Panthers and CJ Stroud to the Texans at 2. And then with the Indianapolis Colts at pick number 4, it wasn't certain whether they were going to try and take another quarterback, but as we did learn and did see, they selected Anthony Richardson 4th overall. Richardson was taken to be the quarterback project of a new Colts head coach in Shane Steichen, who had recently helped develop Jalen Hurts into an MVP candidate. He was also catnip to GM Chris Ballard, who had a history to that point for drafting traits over stats. Another mobile quarterback with a questionable arm was the perfect match for Steichen, and the situation was very solid too. A quality offensive line anchored by Quentin Nelson and Bernard Rainman meant that he would stay upright, while weapons led by Jonathan Taylor and Michael Pittman Jr. was more than most rookies got dropped into. But that's the thing, there was one core oversight. Most, if not all, scouts agreed that Richardson would require at least a full season to develop into a playable NFL starter. Thanks to his struggles with accuracy, decision-making, and turnovers, he had only played 24 games at the collegiate level, and only 13 of those were starts. He was basically as raw could get. And Indy knew this going in, so they signed Gardner Minshew in the offseason to be the starter while their potential rookie developed. But for whatever reason, Steichen elected to name Richardson the starter for week 1 of his rookie season. And I mean, truthfully, questions basically just put aside about whether they should have started him or not. Richardson wasn't bad at all in his first start in the NFL. But that's the thing. One thing where you shouldn't be questioning anything is where you're betting this year. Because yes, your fantasy league and hell, even my own fantasy league, you're going to be paid bragging rights when you guys win it, of course. But on the other hand, with my bookie, they're going to be paying you back with cash. And now look, straight up, this season, we need to stop celebrating like it's 2009 and start betting like it's 2025, whether you're going to be hammering spreads, chasing live lines, or riding moonshot parlays, which personally are my favorite. MyBookie is your one-stop sportsbook and casino in one. My personal favorite thing to do is to bet football all day, of course, Saturday and Sunday, and then obviously after I win, because your boy doesn't lose any bets, to hit the casino and the slots on the website right after. No switching apps and no jumping platforms, just straight up action. And as always, you guys know I had to come through for you, so use our code and your first bet up to $500 is fully covered. Make your play, and if it doesn't hit, you get right back in the action with bet back bonuses. No stress, just a one-time rollover on the return bet, so you're free to reload and keep firing. Make sure to sign up at mybookie.ag with code KRICH, claim your bet back bonus, and make this football season the one where bragging rights come with a bankroll. Again, make sure to use code KRICH when you're betting. And again, thank you to MyBookie for sponsoring today's video, but let's get back into it. Against the Jacksonville Jaguars, Richardson threw for 223 yards at a 65% completion rate and even threw a touchdown. He also showed off how well his legs could translate to the pro level, rushing 10 times for 40 yards and a touchdown. He did take 4 sacks and throw a pick, but those were chalked up to rookie mistakes, and optimism began to grow in Indy. Week 2 started with even more flashes with an early pair of powerful rushing touchdowns, but Richardson led with his head on the second run and left the game with a concussion. And despite he didn't get to finish that game, he did, however, give them the lead, and the Colts held out and got him his first career win. He then returned to action in week 4 and scored 3 total touchdowns, although he completed just 11 passes in 25 attempts. He forced overtime, but the Colts dropped, and it was all downhill from there. Richardson left the Week 5 game against the Titans with a throwing shoulder injury and missed the rest of the season due to surgery. And yes, while there were undoubtedly some incredible flashes over those first few games, a concerning trend had emerged. Despite his big frame, Richardson had only managed to leave 2 of his first 4 games healthy. And I mean, truthfully, for a guy who relies on physicality and tough running as such a big part of his game, that's far from ideal. But still, it was a small sample size, so maybe his sophomore season would be better. And thankfully, fans were cautiously optimistic entering 2024, and that optimism went through the roof when Richardson launched one of the most remarkable touchdowns in NFL history in week 1. Like, I mean, truthfully, that one play just emphasizes how rare of a talent this dude actually is at the quarterback position. But that's the thing, even with that great play he had, there were still old trends that were continuing to linger around. In losing the first 2 games of the 2024 season, Richardson failed to complete more than 50% of his passes in either game. The Colts did barely get a win over the Bears in week 3, but found themselves once again dealing with an injury to Anthony Richardson. He suffered an oblique injury early against the Steelers and missed 2 weeks, and when he did return, he looked even worse. completing 42% and 31% of his passes in weeks 7 and 8 and had just one total touchdown. And then in that week 8 game, Richardson also did something that would follow him for the rest of his career. He tapped himself out of a game in the middle of a drive, seemingly due to being tired. This mistake made fans of the Colts and football as a whole just basically furious. It showed his lack of maturity and potentially of conditioning. So between his awful performances and then the tap out, Richardson was benched for veteran Joe Flacco, although Flacco would be sent back to the bench after just 2 bad weeks himself, and Richardson was a little better after coming back, throwing 4 touchdowns and 5 interceptions in 5 weeks, and adding 5 rushing touchdowns after not scoring one since week 1. The thing is though, is his accuracy was still very troubling, but the Colts were 3-2 with him back. Then prior to a game with the Giants, it was announced that Richardson would miss the final 2 games of the season with a back injury. And don't get me wrong, the season did end with Anthony Richardson posting a winning record as the starter at 6-5, but a lot of that was due to his solid defense and run game, and there was plenty of buzz about the young quarterback being cooked before he had even started cooking. Like, I mean, truthfully, for being a top 5 pick in the draft, the first 2 years of Anthony Richardson have just basically been a massive disappointment. Several different injuries to all just really different parts of the body spoke to poor training and potentially a lack of ability to protect himself on the field. Adding the fact to a career completion percentage of 50.6% and a career touchdown to interception ratio of 12-15 wasn't nearly good enough to claim he was coming along. And that's the thing too, nobody blamed Shane Steichen or the front office because the injuries and decision-making did enough to get the fingers pointing to Anthony Richardson. The team then needed to put some pressure on their young quarterback to see if there was still enough potential and competitiveness to be worth the risk of playing him. I mean, after all, he had just been calm enough a couple months earlier to basically kind of quit a game just months prior. So the Colts decided to sign quarterback Daniel Jones in the 2025 offseason, giving him a prove-it deal with the promise that he could potentially earn the starting job over Richardson. It was said very publicly that Richardson entered training camp as the starter, but would need to show consistent improvement across his game in order to keep the job. And well, at first it really did seem like he was doing enough. He got plenty of first team reps, but Jones's veteran status and remaining skills did enough to keep the job competitive, and both quarterbacks were set to appear in the team's preseason opener against the Baltimore Ravens. Richardson started the game and missed a few throws earlier, but before he could redeem himself, he was sacked and suffered another injury. This time it was just a simple finger dislocation and he wasn't set to miss too much time, but the fact remained. It was yet another game Anthony Richardson was unable to finish. On top of that too, former quarterbacks and analysts were quick to point out that the third-year quarterback should absolutely have spotted the unblocked pressure and done something about it. Jones finished the game for Indy and showed a higher level of consistency than Richardson had in the past 2 years. The two quarterbacks then shared playing time again in the second preseason game, and Jones outperformed AR again, and as a result, just a few days later, Jones was officially named the Colts starting quarterback. It was also clarified by Steichen that the plan is for Jones to start for the entire season, seemingly setting Richardson as the backup for the third year of his career. And that's the thing too, luckily Richardson did present well at a press conference after the decision, saying the right things in returning to practice, but his agent called it a violation of trust and that Richardson should have done enough to keep his job. No matter what though, the Colts have seemingly thrown in the towel on the 2023 4th overall pick. I mean, despite all the negatives and setbacks, there still is time and hope for Anthony Richardson. He's younger than several young quarterbacks in the NFL, including Caleb Williams, Drake May, Michael Penix, Jaden Daniels, Cam Ward, and Shedeur Sanders. Like, all of those guys have either been given great situations or been given much more leash to grow. So who knows, maybe sitting for some time behind Daniel Jones will force him to consider both his mentality and his flaws, giving him a real chance to improve, just like we saw with Bryce Young last year when he was benched. Like, don't get me wrong, Richardson clearly has his issues, but it's not impossible for a guy with his physical prowess to become a viable NFL player. If he can maintain a positive mindset and find the right team for him, there's no reason he couldn't become one of the greatest comeback stories in the history of the NFL. That being said though, it does currently look much more likely that the NFL as a whole kicks him to the curb. So with that being said, the former number 4 pick ruined by Indy might just become another bust. All right, ladies and gentlemen, and we are back for overtime. So basically, where do we start with this? This Anthony Richardson situation is a bit of a CF, if you know what that means. You can try and dissect what that means. But I mean, it's just very debacling right now, especially when they have a guy like Anthony Richardson, so much potential and everything. And also, if you are here, by the way, make sure you join our Discord, like, comment, subscribe. Appreciate all the love that you guys have been showing. I'm going to be trying to do the overtime podcast or whatever you want to call it at the end of the episodes or videos just as frequently as I can, especially during the season when we're going to be doing like 5 videos a week. I'll try to add them when I can, majority of the time. If it's like a 20-25 minute long video, you'll be able to figure out which ones have it in there. But again, shout out to my bookie for sponsoring today's video. That's where I'm going to be doing all my betting this year. Love everything they're doing over there. But besides that, I mean, truthfully, going back to the Anthony Richardson stuff, I don't really know where to start with this because truthfully for me, I think the dude is a freak of nature. I think everybody thinks that, but at the same time, he's one of those quarterbacks where like the dude played 13 games in the NFL. Like they have to be much more patient than what they're thinking this dude is going to be like. They thought he was just going to come in. Shane Steichen was going to find another Jalen Hurts all of a sudden and just bam, they had a Super Bowl winning team right then and there with Jonathan Taylor, the defense they have, Quentin Nelson, A.D. Mitchell, and Michael Pittman Jr. But that didn't happen. We saw those flashes. We saw the throw week 1 last year that everybody was like, oh, Anthony Richardson's a beast. And then obviously we all saw what happened there. But again, it's just very up and down. It's a roller coaster ride with this franchise, not only, but even with truthfully, just with Anthony Richardson himself. The dude has been very injury prone, as we've seen, and everything. For me, at least, my opinion, I'd love to hear what you guys say in the comment section. I will be responding to comments as I'm always trying to, but obviously there's a lot of you guys that comment. But I want to hear what you guys think too, because truthfully for me, I think that this move with Daniel Jones starting for now is a good one, but it's a confusing one. I think everybody, obviously, we're desperate for football. We're like 2 weeks away. We're just kind of blowing this up bigger than it needs to be. But I could see this having the same effect that it had on Bryce Young last year. We saw Bryce Young again, very high pick, same draft class. Dude wasn't looking good. They benched him for, 2 or 3 weeks, and then all of a sudden came back and looked phenomenal down the stretch. Like that was the Bryce Young everybody wanted to see. And it's almost like it took the spotlight off of Bryce Young for a little bit. So that way, when he was put back in the starting role, there wasn't as much pressure. He could settle in, he could do what he needed to do. And then all of a sudden, everybody's kind of high on him this year coming into the season saying, oh, he's going to be great. We're going to see Bryce Young that we saw, the same Bryce Young we saw at Alabama and all that. So I think that's kind of the move that the Colts are trying and hoping is going to happen with Anthony Richardson. I think they kind of want him to be taken out of the spotlight. Especially, I mean, obviously we're going to be talking about this for the next week or so probably. And then maybe once, Daniel Jones starts sucking and everybody kind of wants to take his head off, they'll put Anthony Richardson back in. And hopefully by then he'll be more developed, have more continuity with the team, and hopefully won't be as injury prone either. I mean, obviously the dude needs to protect himself. I know he's 245 pounds and he wants to lower the shoulder and hit everybody, but you also got to protect yourself. Josh Allen's learned that way. I think Cam Newton's talked about it a couple times too. And both those guys are very comparable to what Anthony Richardson is. So again, I think it's just going to be very interesting to see what happens with Anthony Richardson this season. This season's going to tell a lot about what happens, whether he's going to be back in the starting role eventually or whether the Colts are done with him and he does get traded or, just kind of sending that backup role. I think this season will tell us a lot about what his career is going to be. But again, I want to hear what you guys are thinking and what you think the whole situation is going to come to. It's been a lot. I took a second to make this video because I wanted to truly digest everything and bring up some points that we saw a couple of years ago. Again, I don't think that the biggest one obviously is the tapping out of the Texans game last year or 2 years ago. I think it was the Texans. It might've been the Titans. That's going to be with him forever. Like that dude is never going to be able to outgrow that. Like that is with this man for the rest of his career, whether he turns out to be a mediocre quarterback, a great quarterback, or a bust. The dude that's stuck with his legacy forever. So Again, let me know in the comment section what you guys think is going to happen with Anthony Richardson. Let me know what you think is going to happen with the Colts. Truthfully, for me, they're probably, as crazy as this sounds, I could see them finishing in last place in the AFC South. Yes, below the Titans even. I think Cam Ward is going to turn things around in Tennessee, but just with everything going on in Indianapolis, they have a lot of talent, so that's probably not going to happen, but I could definitely see it happening. So again, let me know what you think about the Anthony Richards situation. Let me know what you think about the Anthony Richards situation and just everything about the AFC South. Again, I'm going to be trying to do more of these. Shout out to my bookie. Make sure you guys head over there, use my code, and I appreciate all the love that you guys have been showing. All of this, the NFL season is right around the corner, and I am so excited to continue pushing everything out. Besides that, I will catch you guys in the next one.